Good afternoon, it's Mark Anthony here at Demolition News for the No Agenda show for today. I'd be pleased to know if you would let me know if you can hear me loud and clear, because I'm using a different microphone this time and we've had a few audio issues this morning, so it'd be nice to hear if you can actually let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. That would be very, very useful. Also, if you're joining in the chat, love to hear where you're actually watching from. Always keen to understand where people are actually watching from. I know last time out, this time last week, we had people in from Australia, from New Zealand, America, Brazil, Mexico, and a number of other places as well. I'm going to throw up a few graphics just while we've got a few more people coming into the chat. As I said, this is the No Agenda show. Good morning to all of those that are waving. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just make sure I haven't missed anyone. I will do my wave back. Somebody is watching from Washington, and since you've answered my question, and from India as well, fantastic, and from South Africa, wow, and Jamaica. Wow, I'm stunned, but that also proves the fact that maybe the audio is working. Ryan, good afternoon, or good morning, good day, good evening, possibly even. Mike is good, that's good to hear. All the way from Australia, that's fantastic news. Never ceases to amaze me that we don't really pre-promote these shows, we just go live and hope that somebody turns up, and lo and behold, we've got an instant global audience. I do have a specific topic in mind today, and I just will say this for the record. I'm talking to you on this camera here, which is why I'm looking directly at you, but over here, which will become clear at some point in the future, I'm actually recording this for future broadcast on YouTube as well, so that's the plan with that. I don't know exactly what's happened there. I've obviously pressed the wrong button. Let's have a look, see if we can get something a bit more sensible up. So that's going to be the topic of conversation for today. I'm just going to let a few more people come into the chat. I just wanted to explain before we get into it the system that we have here in the UK, and I'm going to throw that up now. So there you have it. We have a system. Good morning to ABZ Abdullah, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Fantastic, great to have you here, and thank you for joining us. Luke Carney, who is much closer to home, good to have you here as well. So yeah, let me just explain. We have a system of competence cards here in the UK. You literally have to have a competence card literally to just to set foot on a demolition site or on a construction site. Now, I've got one. I've got to be honest with you. I sat the exam, went through all the rigmarole to get mine, just so that I could visit sites without any problem. I think I've used it once in 2 years, and the rest of the time it just sits in a drawer, and it sat in the drawer for so long I can't actually remember where it is, if I'm being completely honest. So that gives you some idea of how valuable my personal card is. But we have two basic channels of qualification here, and we've got one which is the CSCS, which is the Construction Skills Certification Scheme, and we've also got the other one, which is the Certificate of Competence for Demolition Operatives, which is more specifically for the demolition industry. Now, over the years, we have been told repeatedly, ad nauseum actually, Abdullah, I'm actually broadcasting this from the UK. I'm in England at the moment. Wish I was somewhere a little warmer, but yeah, we'll make do with that. So yeah, we've been told for a number of years that the CCDO card, which is demolition specific, is in some way more valid, more maybe even superior, because it is specific to demolition. We've been told by the National Demolition Training Group that somehow if you're operating in demolition, you are somehow different and therefore slightly superior to those operating in construction. There's been a big push to explain to people the importance of CCDO and what a great competence card it is to have. But we've had an issue. The first issue is the fact that we've had lots of operatives that are complaining about the fact that the card is too hard to attain. Under normal circumstances, that's been okay. You know, we've got by and we've encouraged people through the scheme, and we've pushed people through the scheme, and you know we've helped and aided and made sure that people get their CCDO cards. Then the industry had what I can only describe as a double whammy. So obviously we had here in the UK, we had the issue of Brexit, which saw a lot of people, a lot of operatives, particularly from Eastern Europe, who had been CCDO qualified, obviously felt rather less than welcome as a result of Brexit, and decided to go back home and to take their skills and their competence cards with them. So we've immediately got something of a shortfall. We've then had that exacerbated by the fact that we've come out of recession, or not out of recession, out of the COVID-19 lockdown, and we've walked straight into a boom, and a big boom, and it's a boom that shows no signs of abating. Most of the demolition companies I speak to are currently busier than they have been for many years, and we've got a situation here which I mentioned last time I was here. The UK government has announced that it is going to free up £650 billion for infrastructure improvements right here in the UK. Not all of that will be relevant to the demolition industry, but an awful lot of it will. And as a result, we have now got a situation where we've got fewer CCDO operatives and more work. So between Brexit and COVID and now the boom, we've got less workers to do the work, and we've now got a situation where we've got more work than we can actually manage. So where does that leave us? Well, I was speaking to a very senior actually, demolition man just a few days ago, and he was bemoaning the fact that he can't find sufficient CCDO operatives. So he is, as he put it, making do with CSCS operatives. So what does all that mean? Well, first of all, having been told that CCDO was really the only qualification that would be acceptable on demolition sites, we're now apparently going back on that because we need men, and we are quite happy apparently to accept CSCS operatives. And I think my question is going to be this, and I'm going to go slightly off at a tangent now, but bear with me because I will explain it. So we have a situation right now where we've got a Bauma exhibition next year, October next year, and both Volvo and JCB and a number of others have said that they're not going to attend. And my assumption on that is that they are basing that decision on the fact that they've had a couple of years with no trade exhibitions whatsoever. Obviously because of COVID and restrictions on international travel. So those manufacturers like Volvo and like JCB have now run their businesses for the best part of 2 years without trade exhibitions, and it's my guess that they haven't actually seen much in the way of a negative impact on their bottom line. That's where the comparison draws. So we've got a situation now where demolition companies here in the UK are being forced, one way or another, to utilise CSCS operatives rather than the usual CCDO operatives. And my guess is they probably won't see a huge amount of difference. So where does that leave us? Does that mean that the CCDO system will wither and die? Will it just wither on the vine and then we'll never go back? Or are we going to see some sort of incentive scheme to actually get people to re-accept the CCDO scheme? I don't actually know how people will be encouraged to do the CCDO scheme, because it does tend to lead you down one career path, whereas a CSCS opens you up to a much wider opportunity to work. And also, if we are saying that the CCDO scheme is hard to pass, it's hard to actually get your competence card, why would somebody want to put themselves through that? And as I described when I was naming today's show, and I'm going to try and show you exactly what it was I said, that's my belief, is that we are, either directly or indirectly, we are having a downskilling by stealth. We are using less, they're not less skilled, but they're less skilled in a specific area, i.e. in this instance in demolition. Now, there's another thing on the agenda here. Lots and lots of people joining. I really appreciate it. Keep letting me know where you are so I can give you a shout out. We'd love to know where you are all watching from. There is another issue that we've got, and that issue really is the fact that for many years, or I'm going to guess maybe the last 12 years or so, we've had a system here in the UK where the members of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors adopted what they refer to as their accredited site audit scheme, or ASAS, or the site audit scheme. And that scheme was supposedly going to mark NFDC members as a cut above the rest. They were going to be the creme de la creme, and they had a piece of paper that said that they'd been independently audited so they could prove the fact that they were the industry elite. But are they? Increasingly, and this started out in London, but I'm now seeing it spread across other parts of the country. Increasingly, we are seeing NFDC member companies, so the highest ranking demolition companies in the UK, winning work, but then subcontracting it out to a company that is not accredited to the same standard. Now, obviously, that for one thing, it's a double standard, but it also makes me wonder exactly the value of that accreditation scheme if all you're going to do is use that to get your foot in the door with a client or a major contractor, and then basically ignore the details of it. Now, I'd love to know what you think, and I'd love to know if any other countries in the world actually operate an accreditation scheme in the same way. So, just to explain how the site audit scheme works, if you're an NFDC member, in fact, in order to become an NFDC member, it's a prerequisite of membership. You have to submit one of your sites to be visited by an independent third party who will check over the way that you're working, check over things like your site paperwork and all those kind of things. If all of that is found to be in order, then you go forward, and there is a possibility that you will then be accepted as a member of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. Once you are a member, you're expected to submit, and I'm doing this bit from memory, I think it's 1 or 2 sites per year to be accredited again, just to make sure that you're not letting standards slip and so on down the line. Which is great, and I think that's a marvellous idea, and certainly when I was working with the NFDC, it did seem like everyone's heart was in the right place and people were doing it for all the right reasons, and they were looking to raise standards and to prove those standards as well. But here we are in 2021, and we have a situation where those accredited companies are using that accreditation, presumably, to win work, but they're not actually applying that accreditation when it comes to doing the work. They're subcontracting that work out to unaccredited non-member companies. Now, to my mind, first of all, that seems duplicitous to me. You're saying one thing and you're doing quite another. The second thing, I guess, is, are clients actually aware of this practice? If you, I likened this, when I was speaking to somebody the other day, I likened this to football. If you buy a ticket to see Manchester United, you expect to see Manchester United, not their reserve team, and certainly not Accrington Stanley in Manchester United colours. The situation that we have right now with this subcontracting of work is precisely that. A client is buying a company based upon its price and upon its tender and the complexity and everything else, and supposedly on its ability to carry out the work. But then it isn't actually carrying out the work. I've lost count now of the number of demolition sites that I visit, where if you look very, very closely, the sign writing on the excavators and the machines that are there are all magnetic, because under that magnet is basically either no logo whatsoever, or it's the logo of a third party company who is not accredited, they're not an NFDC member, they're not anything. And let me make this absolutely clear. Some of these guys are exceptionally good demolition contractors, but they are not NFDC members. They're not accredited to the same standard by any means. So a client or a major contractor has employed what they believe to be an elite demolition company, but the people doing the work are not that elite demolition company. So I'd love to know what you think on that. As I say, lots of people in the chat here, and I'd love to get your take on that. All of which, I mean, you can see the title that I put on this, Downskilling by Stealth. Because if you think about, we should be accepting, or we should be insisting upon CCDO cards but at a push we'll accept a CSCS card. We should be using elite level contractors, but if things are really busy and we haven't got enough of those, we can subcontract it out to a non-elite demolition company, all of which means that standards start to slip. Now, here in the UK, and my assumption is this is not specific to the UK, we've had an issue with heavy goods vehicle drivers, or HGV drivers as we refer to them here. We've got a shortage, and we've got a shortage to the point where we have supermarket shelves that are empty because there aren't enough drivers to deliver the goods. We've got a shortage of materials in the construction industry, partly because of lack of supply, but also partly because we haven't got enough HGV drivers to actually deliver those goods. When it became clear that we were very, very short on HGV drivers, there was a suggestion that we should lower the standards to allow maybe slightly less competent HGV drivers to have an HGV license to help move materials and produce and food around the country. When that hit the national news headlines, there was outcry because people don't want underqualified HGV drivers on British roads, understandably. An HGV could do an awful lot of damage. It could kill a lot of people if it was out of control. So anybody that is not qualified really probably shouldn't be behind the wheel of an HGV machine. Then surely by that rationale we should have exactly the same outcry when it comes to the situation that we've got in demolition. We need qualified operators, we need qualified operatives, we need qualified demolition companies. We cannot afford to look the other way when we've got too much work on, we haven't got enough operatives, we haven't got enough direct labour within the demolition companies either. And therein lies another thing. I've just mentioned the term direct labour. I've not seen the articles of association from the National Federation of Demolition Contractors for a number of years, but I'm fairly sure they used to contain a clause that basically said if you were an NFDC member you would carry out the work using your own directly employed labour. Increasingly that is not the case. Increasingly you've got, I mean, there are demolition companies out there that own either very little or no equipment whatsoever, because they have basically set themselves up, for want of a better term, as demolition brokers. They win the work, and they're very good at winning the work, so they're very good at the tender process, they're very good at filling in tender documents and winning bids and that kind of thing, but they have no intention of actually carrying out the work themselves. They are basically going to farm that work out. So we've got a situation now where, as I say, this is something that started in London, but I'm seeing it up and down the country now, where you've got demolition contractors who are basically operating as demolition brokers. They're winning the work and then they're farming it out to somebody else. All of which, as the title of this show says, strikes me as downskilling by stealth. We are accepting within the industry, we apparently are now accepting the fact that a CSCS operative will do, even though we've said for years that they won't do. And we're also seem to be accepting or expecting clients to accept the fact that even though we've said, you know, we are an elite force, we are the best in the business, but we're actually going to get somebody else who maybe isn't the best in the business to do the work for us. All of which strikes me as not a great idea. And the biggest worry I have with all this, I mean, well, my biggest worry obviously is the fact that we're talking about potentially endangering people, so endangering people on site because they're not qualified, or they're excuse me, they're working with people that aren't qualified. You're also potentially endangering pedestrians and people that are working in neighbouring buildings. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. As I mentioned at the outset of the show, we're in a boom now, but that boom is going to get bigger. We've got major road programs coming up here that are going to require the input of demolition contractors. We've got £650 billion has been set aside to improve the road and rail network here, together with airports. So there's an awful lot of work out there to be done that is going to require the input of demolition contractors. if I'd have said that 5 years ago, I could have pointed and said, you know, all of these demolition contractors are the very best of the very best. They are more than up to the job. Today, I'm not sure that's the case. Today, I'm more inclined to believe that an awful lot of that work that is won by elite demolition contractors will actually end up being done by, oh, excuse me, by non-elite subcontractors. And that is, to my mind, that is the start of a very slippery slope indeed. What does it take to stop this? Well, I think it takes the will of demolition contractors. And my guess is that some demolition contractors, particularly those ones that I've mentioned here in London, are now so big and so thinly spread that subcontracting work out is probably their only way of actually meeting the demands that are placed upon them. So that's one issue. I guess the other issue is whether clients are literally aware of what's going on. James at Lifebound Levers, middlemen taking their cut, leaving it open for less skilled contractors and higher chance of an accident occurring.